I use Blender as my primary sculpting tool, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to sculpt like ZBrush but in Blender. I'm going to cover Dynamesh, ZRemesh, Subdivisions, and Reprojecting Details. First, we're going to cover Dynamesh, which in Blender is just called Remesh. The tools up here, you have Voxel Size and Remesh. If I click this, it basically creates a denser mesh. So the point of that is as you're sculpting and creating geometry, eventually you'll be pulling when there's really not much geometry there. So at that point, you want to go in and click Remesh again, so then you can continue to sculpt more details. So I actually never click this UI. There's a really simple shortcut in Blender where if you press R, it shows the voxel size grid. You can move the mouse left and right to choose the density. And then when you click, it sets it, and then you can click Control R to actually remesh. So as you're sculpting, if things are getting a little, sparse with the mesh, you click Control R, and you can just keep doing that as you're sculpting. So I'm going to actually show you how this works in practice when I'm sculpting a character head. So I'm going to turn on symmetry, and I'm going to just start with how I would normally sculpt a character. So the first thing would be to pull down the face a little bit. I'm actually going to remesh here at, let's say, the default 0.1. And I'm going to create the eye socket, put a little area for the chin, pull out the nose a little bit, and then pull out the mouth a little bit. And it doesn't look great. In general, when sculpting, if you've done this for a while, it usually looks pretty bad for a while, and then eventually it starts to look good. So just bear with me. I'm not going to show you the full process. I'm going to show a bunch of time lapse so you can kind of get a sense for when and how I use Dynamesh. So already I think we need more resolution, so I'm going to just bring it up a little bit, and we have some more here. I can smooth it out a little bit too by holding shift, and I'm going to go into time-lapse mode and just start sculpting a little bit more, and I'll pause again when I want to go back into remesh, so you can just get a sense of the density and when I choose to increase the resolution. So I'm going to pause the video real quick. I just tweaked some proportions. There's still a lot to do. I also added a separate mesh for the neck as well as the ears. So the ears specifically, before I merge them into one object, I want to sculpt this a little bit. So I'm going to go into sculpt mode on the ear. And in object mode, I want to click Control A and apply the scale. So the scale is 111 over here. And then in sculpt mode, now I can remesh this a little bit, and I'm just going to sculpt the ear a little bit before I actually connect it. Now that I sculpted the ear a little bit, you can see there's similar resolution. Maybe the ear is a little bit more. The neck I didn't sculpt at all, so there's no resolution, but that'll be good enough. So I'm basically going to take these two objects, click on the head, I'm going to merge them. And now when I'm in sculpt mode, basically everything can get affected together. And I'm going to increase my resolution a little bit for remesh, and then I'll remesh it again. So now I will just continue to sculpt and refine. Here's another point in the sculpting process that I'm gonna remesh. So basically, I just snake hooked and pulled some of these forms out so that I could have a little bit of a torso, and you can see the mesh isn't even, and it's also being pulled a little bit. When I remesh, I expect some details in the face to disappear. I'm gonna have to work to get some of that back, but it's still worth it to me since I wanted to add more of the mesh in here. So I just did that. And now I have a lot more resolution to play with over here, as well as continue to rework the face. In general, I'm still not very precious about this. This is all very rough, so I have no problem remeshing and getting some details back. So let's go back to the time lapse. And I'm going to do it one more time. You can see I masked and then moved a bunch of geometry. So now we can smooth that out and continue to work. I'm going to do one more remesh just because I want a little bit more detail in the face. And then after that, we're going to do the ZRemesh with subdivisions. So last one, I think we're at 0.29. So I'm going to just increase that to 0.2. We could always type it in. There we go. Cool. I'll do a few more details and then I'll pause one more time. Okay, we're at the part of the model where I think we're done with the remesh feature and we want to go to what ZBrush would call zRemesher. Essentially, we want to have smooth topology that we can then sculpt more detail on top of. The goal here was basically to create the forms that in general we want to follow. So like in general, I try to make the jaws and the chin like a little sharper, add some flatness to the side, to the nose, to different areas of the face. And now there's a bunch of details that need to be fixed. I could just increase the remesh resolution, but there's a much better way and it follows the workflow of other sculptors in ZBrush. So we're going to move on to that. In order to do that, there's actually an external tool I use. So if I press N, I have this tool called QuadRemesher or QuadRemesh. This tool is on exoside.com. So basically it is literally ZRemesher from ZBrush. The person who made this plugin for Blender, as well as basically every other program, is the engineer who coded ZRemesher for ZBrush. So the code is identical. You'll get the exact same result. It's pretty reasonably priced. So if you were to buy it, it's $100 for commercial use, $60 for personal use, and that's lifetime. So I bought it once and never had to buy it again, and it's amazing. And he updates it every time a new version of Blender comes out. So I'm going to use that. Here I'm going to turn on symmetry, and I'm going to do a poly count here, or a quad count. I don't want it to be too high. I usually do something like, I don't know, 15,000 to 30,000, somewhere in that range. Because we are going to then subdivide and sculpt more detail later. So let's maybe try, I'm going to just say 20,000, see what it's like. So I'm going to click remesh, and it basically duplicates the base mesh and creates a new one called retopo base. So if I ever want, I go back to my old one. I need to get this over here. And then here's the one that it created. So you can see the topology is really clean. It's not as clean as if you were to manually retopo yourself, but for sculpting purposes, this is really, really helpful. So I basically take this base, and now that we've done the ZRemesh, we want to do subdivisions and reprojecting details. So in order to do that, I'm going to create a multi-resolution modifier. And this is basically like in ZBrush when you do subdivisions. So I could click subdivide, and now in sculpt mode, I can get like way finer detail. I could even subdivide again and, you know, get really micro detail. And this is way more performant in Blender than doing the remesh feature. There's a lot of optimizations when sculpting through multi-res. So this is another reason why it's way better to use this than, you know, just like keep remeshing until you have a crazy dense mesh. So this will also keep file size pretty small. And because we did a 20,000 quad count mesh, if you look here, we have like some details that were kind of like smoothed out. So if you look at the nose, for example, and then you look at the remeshed one, it's like way smoother. Maybe it lost the flatness on the front of the nose. So in order to reproject our details back, we're going to use a deform shrink wrap. We're going to do project, and we're going to choose the old base mesh as our target object, and we want positive and negative to be checked. So this, if I toggle on and off, you can see we get a lot of those details back. We also get some of the wobbles from our previous one, but because this is on our quad topology that follows the form, it's going to be much easier to get rid of those wobbles and also clean it up. So now that we have the shrink wrap here, I can't just start sculpting because this is a modifier. We want to, in order to like apply the reprojection, we're going to apply this modifier. So now it's baked into our sculpt. And now we have basically the mesh we left off at with nicer topology, I should say. And we can continue to work on this. So for example, now if I want to get some of these details back, I can do this. I could subdivide again and keep honing in exactly what I want. That's the full process. Now it's a matter of just continuing to sculpt and refining the details. If you like this video, please drop a subscription, and I'll see you in the next one.